I'm Sarah Golden, and I'm here with Jonathan Schuldenfrei from Deloitte. And so, thank you for coming and being here today. My question for you is about the carbon markets. What is the difference between the voluntary and the regulated carbon markets?
Sure. So the regulated carbon market is one that is required for companies to adhere to certain rules and regulations. It's installed by the CARB, which is the California Air Resources Board. The ARB is the regulatory body that operates in California. They also have other jurisdictions with Quebec as well, where they regulate how much emissions an organization can potentially emit at a certain time or for a certain window. And then they also provide auctions for the excess, and they limit how much carbon credits an organization could purchase as a result of their operations overall. The voluntary market is any company can go into a voluntary market and acquire carbon offsets to offset their emissions in order to manage their carbon emissions overall.
So, with the regulated carbon markets, does that only apply within California if it's the California Air Resources Board?
So it's companies that operate with that have adjacent operations with California, so they don't necessarily need to be domiciled there, but they do have operations there, and they would be dictating the cap and trade in terms of their emissions overall. So yes,
Got it. So, just about any large organization would then be subject to that.
most likely.
So, something else I hear about is the idea of there being good carbon projects. So, what is a good project?
Sure. There's there's probably some principles that organizations need to consider when they think about a good carbon project. It needs to be measurable. It needs to be verifiable. It needs to be enforceable. It needs to be additional, and it also needs to be permanent. So those are the five criteria that organizations should probably consider when they are evaluating a good project.
And what are the safeguards that when organizations are looking to procure these carbon credits, what are the safeguards in place? How do you know that it's a good project?
It's a great question. I think there's a lot of organizations, and there's probably a lot of tools and advisory services out there that can help organizations. So there's audits, there's on the ground audits that organizations can perform. There are tools that have satellite technology where they can do measurement and verifications, where they can kind of see what is happening in the globe. But it is something that is evolving, and it's something that organizations really need to be on top of. I just had in a situation where two clients had a dispute over a project because of the border. The border wasn't in where they thought it was going to be, and it actually exceeded a certain jurisdiction, and that jurisdiction precluded them from being allowed to have those carbon projects.
Well, the border of the project itself.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So how are we doing in creating these good projects? I know that there's so many organizations that are counting on these carbon credits in order to meet their climate goals. How are we doing in the actual inventory to be able to meet the demand for them?
I think the inventory is growing. The market is growing in terms of demand. The supply is also growing. There's a lot of organizations out there that are creating the good carbon projects. It's an evolving market like any other. And given that the market is nascent, I'd say that there's probably a lot of work to be done. What I've seen is a trend towards carbon insetting, where organizations are looking more inwards into their value chain rather than outwards to a market.
So if you're a company that's wanting to get involved with this, what guidance do you offer? Where should organizations get started?
The trend I've seen is really looking at carbon reduction, optimizing your value chain, doing as much as you possibly can to reduce your current carbon based on your current operations, looking at opportunities to potentially offset or to remove carbon from your business overall, find replacement opportunities for your projects.
Got it. So it should be the last step. First, you reduce everything you can, and then you actually turn to these projects.
100%.
Yeah, and then where do you go?
Then where you go is really potentially looking at a carbon market, or you're looking at alternative devices that could potentially remove carbon from the atmosphere. So it's really looking at substitution assets to really manage your carbon emissions overall.
Well,
And then also stakeholder engagement, because it's a journey with others. So being able to engage with stakeholders is also critical.
well, Jonathan Schuldenfrei, thank you so much for joining me here and for navigating this carbon market world.
Thank you.